Bam! What is going on, folks? MC is in the house. My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to Warrior Stream, which happens every week. And you guys are going to hear my chime. It reminds me that I'm on time. It's also pretty annoying when you're trying to talk and there's a damn clock chiming off. As I bring up the lead talking points for today, I just want to give you guys a reminder that if you guys have not gone to masterchim.com and put your email in, you are not getting my emails every day. They're free. I put some time into them. I pretty much sit down and creatively think about, a thought. I try to get it out succinctly as I can. And there's also a quote of the day there. So, the value that you get for literally just giving your email is pretty one-sided, I would say. But maybe that's not even true because I do get something out of it and that I'm able to talk to you guys through email in case I ever get thrown off of the social media platforms that I've had a love-hate relationship with for about a decade now. So let's see what's going on. Corey, what's up? Alex, what's up? Johnny Groove, what's up, brother man? Caceres, what's going on? Good to see you. All right, so today's talk, balance is a movement, not a position. This is a topic that I've spoken about a bunch of times before, and there's an idea of deep balance that I have used to design my mastermind group, 3 Roads, on. And it's really the culmination of a lot of strategies and different methods that I've accumulated over the years to achieve what I would say is a deep balance lifestyle. Now, in the 3 Roads model, the 3 Roads themselves are the self, tribe or relationships, and resources, or in the case of business, profit. If you look at a business, the gross of a business is the busyness, right? But the resources is the profit, right? So it's always, staying in contact with the profit that we should be connected to in any endeavor. In business, obviously, it's a little self-explanatory, but we put ourselves out there and invest our resources, be it time, energy, and whatnot, in different things. We have to ask ourselves, what is the profit? What are we getting out of this? What is the return that warrants this investment? Is it an investment at all, or is it just a waste of those resources? So the idea of pursuing deep balance, like what's the difference between balance and deep balance? Well, adding the deep, descriptor to it really denotes a sort of longevity or a development over a period of time in applying that type of mindset to one's life and all of the sort of foundations of one's life and identity that are built as a result. It's very hard to go through a very stressful, anxiety building, let's say, emergency in your life if you don't know who you are, you don't know what's truly important. I've heard this saying before, and I'll share it. If you have a problem that can be solved by money, it's not a real problem. And when we think about what exactly that means, we got to ask ourselves, well, all the things that we're stressing out about right now, are they really problems? Because if somebody can hand you money and those problems have gone away, was it really something that we should have been, allowing access to our state, our approach of how we apply our energy to our lives to begin with? Is it something that we should have allowed ourselves to become lesser versions of ourselves as a result of engaging with it? And obviously I would argue that it is not. So what's up, Jamie? What's up, Derek? Good to see you guys. So I sent an email this morning. Again, if you're not on the email list, you did not get that email, right? But the talking points that I shared are, start with the first one. Your process will determine your progress. Here's the thing about balance, and I made the attempted to be funny seesaw, thumbnail image for this video, for today's live stream. The idea of maintaining balance is first and foremost acknowledging and accepting that we're never actually going to be in balance. Balance, therefore, is a movement. If you look at somebody who is balancing on a tightrope, they do not just stay there in some stationary fixed way. It's really, there's all these variables, these factors that are being engaged, and their relationship with all of these factors and variables is one of movement. They're trying to move to counter how the environment is looking to take them off of their position. So balance is the act of engaging those variables. It is not one static position that one would look at somebody balancing on a tightrope and go, why does he keep moving? He'll eventually fall off. If he keeps moving, why doesn't he just balance himself there and stay? Now, it's also worth noting, if we don't go to a tightrope scenario, when we look at a broader foundation, maybe a platform, somebody could stand on there and give the impression that they are standing in a fixed position. So there's something to be said for what type of foundation we build our lives on. Are we looking to balance on a tightrope, which requires a lot of movement in order to maintain that balance? Or are we doing the work necessary to build that platform, that foundation that we can build upon? So reducing the amount of movement required to maintain our current level of growth. Deep balance, big platform. Think of it that way. So your process will determine your progress. How many of you guys are, engaging different forms of obstacles and stressors in your lives, and your reaction to that is one that empowers you, tries to maintain a status quo, or winds up costing you something? It's easy to pick out the ones that their process costs them something, because there's a very apparent amount of stress that they can maintain before they become dysfunctional. Too many things get stacked on at once and they're out of commission. They have to go and sort of empty their bucket, to use the bucket model analogy. When you have a process that on the other end of it is looking to make you stronger as a result of engaging with these stressors, that's what people call anti-fragile. But without the terms, just looking at the effects, the real world effects that type of mindset produces for an individual, well, what is it? We understand that just like lifting weights, every single time we meet resistance in any repetitive, iterative way, we wind up stronger as a result. A lot of times we forget that just the way we deal with anything else still falls under that same concept in terms of what we are at the end result of it. Stress makes us stronger, right? I'm the guy who, pressure to power. Well, what does that mean? It means that we understand that instead of just going to, let's say, lift heavy weights for the sake of lifting heavy weights, we know that if we design how we lift those heavy weights, the type of strength that we get, we have a little bit more control over. We modify, control the input. We could modify, control, if not at least influence the output. So our process will determine our progress. It's not about finding a life where you never engage these stressors. I mean, think about it. I always make the joke that I don't respect the fighting ability of somebody who walks around saying he's undefeated, because he has yet to let me know if he's ever even been in a fight. Technically, if you've never been in a fight, you can walk around and tell people you're undefeated. Does that make you actually skilled or somebody worth listening to when it comes to fighting? Well, obviously not. So if we look at that as, in fighting, the value that we place on a person comes from them engaging fighting and becoming, successful through that engagement, if we take that sort of criteria, that standard of value, and we apply it to our own lives, and we say we want to be valuable, do we then really want a life that doesn't have any obstacle or adversity? And if we're willing, if you're following up to this point and you're saying, you know what, I do want to, engage adversity and obstacles in my life because I want to become stronger as a result of it, well, then it begs the question, well, what's your process for doing so? If somebody wants to get stronger in the gym, there's a program they could follow. They can go and get a trainer. They can go and seek a group of people who are also doing what they're doing to share that journey and the experiences and the support that comes as a result of being around like-minded people. But if you're somebody who wants to get bigger and stronger in the gym, and you just go to the gym and you putz around here and there, well, we all know that is not inherently going to give you the results that you claim to want. So again, what is your process? Is your process just to put yourself in the gym and just spend some time there, and maybe through some sort of fucking osmotic absorption process, you're going to become stronger and more muscular? No, we need to have a process aside from engaging the potential of that environment. All right. If you're in a gym and there's a lot of weights there's a lot of stuff you can do with the weights. So yeah, you could have the perfect plan, but if you don't show up where there's any weights, there's also a situation that is not easily solved. But again, it speaks to your process. And what does that mean for the average person? It means that when you're facing adversity, you should ask yourself, why am I getting stressed out over this? Well, what are my options in terms of what I can do? Movement is mandatory. Ultimately, it comes down to what it is we actually do. So why is that not the first question we ask ourselves? Why do we have a process, or at least why do we accept a process that has us do all these other things before we just say, well, what can I do? And I'm going to do it. It's a very simple process if we don't get in our own way. But again, easier said than done. What's up? Cherrytown Vibe. What's up, brother man? Derek writes, difficult situations I experienced in the past really don't seem that challenging now. If I have time to complain, I have time to work on myself. I keep myself in check with that. It's very good. Danny, what's up, Danny? Danny writes, what's up, Chim? Definitely tough to stay balanced dealing with special needs kids. It's constant stress. And I believe you, and I certainly empathize with that journey. I would offer that, I made this example a couple hours ago. On Wednesdays, I have a meeting with my my mastermind group, and during the things that I was discussing, I brought up this idea of money and the relevance of our relationship with money, and how $2,500 right now, I just engaged some sort of service. I had to send somebody $2,500 plus all this tax because he's fucking Canadian. And I was making the point to my guys in my group, there was a time in my life where $2,500 would have been, just like an obscene amount of money, when I was in my 20s. Certainly as a teenager, it's like $2,500. Like, who the fuck is $2,500 laying around? Whereas now, it's really, I was glad to pay this individual $2,500. Probably would have paid him a little bit more had he asked me. I don't want to get too arrogant with that in case he's watching. But I was very grateful to pay $2,500. And it was certainly a bargain on my end as far as I was concerned. And, inflation aside, it's really my relationship with that amount of money changed because of who I became. And, this is one of my big criticisms for, a lot of the people that I've known. And I've known, I think, 2 people who have killed themselves. And like one of the obvious things in my reaction was like this, like, why didn't you just go somewhere? Like, this would have passed. It's your perspective that is making this overwhelming. I don't think there's ever been a stressor that has led somebody to kill themselves that has not been successfully traversed and engaged by somebody else. Meaning the thing that they off themselves for has been managed successfully by other people, meaning the blueprints were there. And I think, again, our relationship of who we become over time really predicts the perspective that we maintain with these factors in our lives. Earlier, I shared, the phrase, the saying, any problem you have that can be solved with money is not a real problem. Money problems aren't real problems. They're money problems. Well, if you're willing to grant that logic, then it's, well, if we really have problems, what are they actually anchored to? Because so many of us, we very easily, conveniently just attach our problems to money. Like you'll find somebody who is a loser, somebody who just does not invest in themselves, somebody who doesn't, take his life and the gratitude he should have for his life sincerely. Somebody that just walks around entitled, blaming everybody else for his issues, because maybe as a younger person, those formulas work for him, right? Blame the mom when you're 4, the mom is going to give you something, right? And here he is, a 40-year-old, 3-year-old, still looking to complain to somebody to get what he wants. Well, if you're somebody who has that mindset, if you're somebody who's of that sort of approach, how is it that you ever think your perspective's going to change? It's like you got to invest in yourself. You got to grow. Everything else is some sort of acceptance on the status quo. When using my ladder model, my ladder of self-power model that I use a lot in my content, it's the idea of falling in love with a rung. You were on a rung, maybe you weren't even on the ladder at some point, and you were not satisfied. And you said to yourself, I need to get on this ladder, I need to climb. Or maybe you were already on a rung and you were like, this isn't for me. I need to get more. I need to be more. And you start climbing. And then you get to a point where that comfort starts setting in again. And then you just find a new rung to fall in love with. And it's like, for me, my perspective, I look at an individual when that happens, and it's almost like they're pressing the reset button on this cycle. It's like, all right, they'll have a couple of months, maybe a couple of years that they'll go right back to where they were that led them to get to this higher rung. And hopefully, with a little bit of work, luck sometimes, an individual will realize, oh, I should just be climbing. That is what I should become. I should become somebody who climbs, not just find the next rung to fall in love with, and then allow all the momentums that you've built to fall by the wayside, right? All right. Corey says, I try to be that person who never boils over, but admit it still happens. Well, you know what? We could be perfect next time. That's one of my sayings. It's, to think that we're going to get it right. Like, put it this way. I have a lot of formulas, a lot of protocols that I put myself through. Why is it that I still need this sort of external protocol to follow in certain situations? Because my internal reactions to those stimulus, like those stimuli or stressors, they don't give me the result I want, right? There's still times where I have to basically put a framework of behavior around myself so I don't overreact to individuals that I deal with in business. Like, some people are just inherently soft. Some people just move at a different pace. Some people, they don't value my alliance as much as I may value their alliance. And I don't mean that in terms of liking one another. I mean, I need them more than they need me. And when they treat me accordingly, sometimes I have to remind myself of, well, I don't have enough to offer to warrant him investing more in this alliance, and I have to develop a patience because of that. So, the idea of, things going sideways, like, that's just par for the course, Two on Tom. What's up, brother man? Caceres writes, in today's world, one does not need money to improve or solve their issues. I love your saying that says climb those ladders and ride those waves. Obviously, yeah, absolutely. It's just, you have individuals, and some of my coaching students have experienced this, or communicated this to me. It's like they work so hard for an outcome. Let's say it's a business outcome, and they're putting in all the time, and they have what they think is this great idea, and they bust their ass trying to make it, develop and everything. And then because of the level of effort that they put in, there's this entitlement that grows along with it. Like, and now people are supposed to buy this from me. And now people are supposed to participate, in my service. They're supposed to visit my store. And it's like, well, who the fuck told you that you deserve any of that? And what their reaction tends to be is something in that really amounts to, well, I worked so hard, so somebody has to pay me for that work. And that's the problem. Therein lies the problem. Doesn't matter how hard you work. If you're asking somebody else for their shit, right? If you're asking somebody to buy your stuff, invest in your stuff, you're asking them for their shit. If you're asking for their shit, maybe you should ask them what they want. Maybe you should not work in a vacuum, just appeasing your own inclinations, your own, passions and everything, with just being completely disconnected from the people that you're eventually going to ask to pay for it. Maybe you should ask them what they want. Maybe you should see what they want to invest in. And again, this isn't even a value judgment. It's just that it's incongruent. It doesn't match up to develop these things in a vacuum and then somehow feel entitled to other people's resources, for it. It's like, no, yeah, you could follow your passion and just do what you want and do what you love. That's not a problem. And then they say, oh, but my business isn't working. It's like, oh, so it's not just follow your passion. It's follow your passion. And you also want people to pay you for it. That's a different fucking game right there. That is a different game. You can do whatever you want. But as soon as you ask for different levels of participation from other people, well, you should probably give their desires, their wants and needs a seat at the table when developing what it is that you're providing before you ask them for money, right? Hail, Jim Yankowski. Good to see you, brother, man. Let's get to this next point that I put here. Reality will let you know. Reality will let you know. All right. So I've mentioned in my book, the saying, keep your feet on the floor. Floor being an acronym for feedback loop of reality. Reality will let you know. If you think you have a good idea for business and you try it and it doesn't work, reality let you know. Reality is almost like a calculator when you press equals, right? And then it gives you the answer to whatever you had, input prior to that. Well, our ideas, our efforts, and everything that we do eventually gets invested or given to reality. And that's like pressing the equal sign, and then reality tells you what the end result of that was. Some people, they continue to do what makes them feel better. It doesn't work. They continue to stay in their vacuum, disconnected from that conversation that reality is trying to have with them. And they continue to just put more and more effort into it. But again, they've never built a relationship with this feedback loop of reality that they could start disconnected from. But if they keep listening to reality, eventually they will design and build a functional level of overlap. That's why metrics are so important in business. It's like, well, if you're fucking up by whatever criteria you design to come to that conclusion, if you are fucking up, how do we fuck up a little bit less? Well, we got to know some numbers. We got to be able to see what it is that we could change to be able to see if we've actually moved from one place to the next. Survival experts, right? Kevin Estella, good friend of mine. If you guys ever want to learn about survival, buy his books, go to his shit. He's the best survival guy I ever met. It's an idea of orienting oneself in the woods. We see a tree here, we point in a direction, like we could mark a piece of the tree. We could in this confusing maze of trees in a forest, you could build a relationship from one tree to the next to be able to sort of measure the direction that you're going without getting disoriented. So you're not, walking in circles and stuff. Well, when we have metrics, we could tell, okay, what direction are these numbers moving? What did we do? How were the numbers affected? Let's do it a little bit more if it's moving in the right direction. Let's do something else or do it a little less if it's moving in the wrong direction. Building a relationship with reality. And metrics is like a translator, right? You ever see Star Trek, those universal translators? They actually have them now for real, but in Star Trek, like there's a little machine there and everybody talks their varying, the levels of fucking alien gibberish, but somehow it all comes out in English, right? Well, metrics, that's what metrics do for a business. Well, think about you on an individual scale. What metrics do you have to pay attention to that are not, just being addressed by some subjective feeling that you have about how things are going? Like, what could you actually measure? You're not getting along with your wife? Ask her why. Start to begin a conversation. Start to track things. It's a funny thing, when you're not getting along with your wife or your girlfriend, and maybe not your wife nor your girlfriend, but you just sit there and ask them, well, why aren't we getting along? What should we do? And then you try that. And it's like, yeah, well, that didn't work. Oh, yeah, actually, that did work. We had a good time doing it. Let's do more of that. It's funny when you have a feedback loop of reality, how you could move at such a faster pace than when you're just sitting there in your vacuum trying to figure everything out, by theory. I can't tell you in business how many times I thought I had a great idea. And I did everything, built it up, brought it to the market, and fucking crickets. Not one person was interested in it. And I swore this was the thing. I was talking to somebody the other day that was quoting Alex Hormozy. I think I was in a coaching session, and the guy was mentioning it. And he said that the quote that he had from Hormozy was, in business, all you got to do is hit one home run. One home run, and, it changes your life generationally. And I understand that. So I don't take offense and get discouraged, when one of my ideas doesn't work, because that's not the rung, that's not the rung that's going to get me to where I want to be. I'm a climber. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. No problem. I'm letting go of this rung, grabbing the next one anyway. So again, our process is going to determine our progress, and reality will let us know. We got to stay connected to the feedback loop of our efforts and the consequence and outcomes that they're designing. Cherrytown Vibe asks, how did you get good at understanding how to solve people's problems, and when did it click for you in being able to start a successful business? Well, I would say that the first thing I did was start an unsuccessful business, right? And then I learned through the processes I'm describing how to make that more effective at progressing in the direction I wanted it to. When it comes to solving people's problems, like, there's some stuff that I have some feedback for, and people find it useful. I don't solve people's problems. I give them some insights, some feedback, but ultimately they're the ones that have to, initiate the movement that's going to get them to where they want to be. And it's also, life is a series of moving goalposts, if you will. There are things that would satisfy people now just because of who they happen to be right now. They have a couple of these wins under their belt, they become somebody more. And at that higher level, of existence, the higher level of development on a personal level, their goals tend to evolve as well. I'm sure everybody watching this at some point in their life, like I remember hearing when I was a teenager that somebody got a job and was like making, I think, $300 no matter what every week. And I remember hearing $300 and thinking, well, if I could find a way to get $300 a week, like, I'm set, said the 16-year-old me. $300, because what does that do? That pays for, to go to the movies, buy some sneakers, buy some food, like hang out with my boys. Like, that's what $300 did. right now, if I were to only make $300, like it'd be a problem. It'd be a big problem, but as we grow, we adjust accordingly. So I don't really help people solve their problems. I just offer them feedback. I think this is beneficial. One of the first things that I do with individuals when I start coaching them is I ask them basically three things. What they represent, what are their belief systems, what do they stand for, what are their codes, their morals, things that exist in some sort of transcendent way, in their relation to them. Like, these are the things that I'm about. And then I look at what it is that they do in terms of investing in themselves. What are their rituals that address the self? Are they sleeping a certain amount? Are they reading and investing in their education? Are they moving their bodies? Are they maintaining a relationship with their physicality? They don't have to get a six-pack, but your body's the vehicle that you're using every day to do these things. Are you keeping it maintained? Right? So I'm asking what their belief systems are. I'm asking about their rituals. And then I ask about what they do. Like, what are the things in their lives that they actually do? And I'm able, from my point of view, to point out, well, you said that you believed in this, but here you're doing this, and here you're doing this. Those two things don't match this thing that you said you're all about. So are you about this or are you about this? You get the guy that says he believes in helping people and looking to better people's lives, but doesn't spend any time with his kids, doesn't spend any time with his wife, and you got to ask yourself, well, so it's not helping people. It's helping strangers. It's like you just have to get the details right. So we're actually describing the landscape of his life. And usually during that initial process, we find some work that we have to do. We find something, we got to figure out how we make this match this. We got to figure out, why this, which is the product of a formula that you put in when you were a teenager, you're still running at 40 years old. And understanding why it's sabotaging all these other things that are, the applications of a much more sophisticated you. Here you are still being this guy in this one situation. Some of us might have people that we know in our lives that as soon as we see them, we want to fucking, like destroy them. They just have all of these subconscious associations with us that whatever state we were in when usually dealing with this individual, that state comes right back as soon as we see them. Well, that's some work that we have to do. We can't allow certain, stimuli from the environment just control our states. But if we don't see that difference, we're just riding a wave with a blindfold on, just going wherever it takes us. And that might not be congruent with what we say our goals are. So one of the big things that I help people with in the beginning is just being congruent. I don't even have to make a value judgment. It's not that I don't have any value judgments to offer, but we have to work to get there. It's like, I'm not going to tell somebody what I think is better or worse if I'm just saying they're going. It's like if I'm asking you, which way do you want to go? And they say up. And I go, okay, you're going up here, you're going up here, but here you're going down. So again, do you want to go up or down? Well, I want to go up. Well, this is down. Well, I don't agree that's down. Well, let's just find out if it's down. This is going here. And then, like, I don't have to say which is better, up or down. He said he wanted to go up. And I'm showing him and prove to him that he's going down here. Right? It could be left, right, this way, that way, red, black, like it doesn't matter. But if we are congruent, we wind up actually now having for the first time metrics that we could trust. And once we have these metrics we could trust, we can now start building what the ladder looks like. It's this rung to that rung to that rung to that rung. And that's how the process, becomes developed, right? All right, the last talking point, which I somewhat overlapped with so far, it always starts with you. It always starts with you. So let me see if I can share this. picture. You know, this thing would be a lot more user-friendly if it stopped being an asshole. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this. Open with, open it with paint. All right. Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, I am so spoiled. Oh, all right. This works. That's what I was looking for. All right. Not the best version of this image I'm going to show, but it's not letting me share an image. It's just letting me share a screen. So I had to open this to be able to share the screen. Oh my God, this isn't working. So basically what I'm trying to do is share the damn thumbnail that I made for this thing. And it is not letting me do it because computers are assholes. That's not true. All right, let's do it this way. How annoying is this? This is why people turn off my videos when they're watching them. By the way, when I'm teaching people how to do live shows, I tell them to never do this, what I'm doing right now. But sometimes it'd be like that. Not happening. All right, because I give up on this. So the idea of looking at the image, you know what I'm going to do? When we're looking at the image that that I designed for this particular show, you know, I created a seesaw. The seesaw obviously is there to represent balance. And the things that I put on either side of it are actions and intentions, right? Actions and intentions. So if I'm looking at what it is that I'm doing, it begs the question, well, what am I designing that action for? Is it anchored to something? Is there a context that decides for me what action I'm taking in the first place? And the way that I represented that in the image is through intentions, right? So if I'm somebody who is looking at all the things I do during a given day, and then I ask myself, out of all those things that I did, what intentions were anchored to those actions, you could begin to design an understanding of, well, how much of what I'm doing is actually connected to some sort of goal or mission? Or am I doing things during the course of the day to just entertain myself, or maybe to do things that have some sort of cathartic value to just make me feel better, you know, for whatever reason? Or maybe I'm just sitting here reacting to whatever my environment, you know, prompts me to do, where I'm basically just like a pinball, just waiting for something to hit me to go in some direction, right? And I think when we look at that relationship with our actions, or we put that sort of lens on it, we realize that, you know, I'm never going to be somebody who gets everything perfect. But, and I did all of this just to do that, I'm never going to be somebody who's perfect. But if I'm looking at the fulcrum as being reality and the bar of being my mission, we start to understand what balance looks like then. We start to understand, well, how do we add a little bit of quantifiable, you know, relatable information to this idea of balance, you know, or mission? I just had a coaching student yesterday ask me, you know, because he says, you know, you've used this term mission a lot, and I think I know what it means, but what's the context in which you're using it? And it's like, oh yeah, let's go over that, and sometimes I have to, remind myself that not everybody's operating with, under the same terms the way I am. And so when I look at mission, it's like, yeah, it's my actions and intentions as they balance on reality, right? To not fall off. I've given you guys the example before of Miyagi. The idea of balance being that scene in A Karate Kid where Miyagi is on the rowboat and Daniel's doing the kata on the rowboat. And at the end, he falls off. And I make the observation that balance is not being stagnant. We went over that earlier in this talk where, the idea of balance, the act of balance is a series of being out of balance and compensating. So there's always going to be movement when balancing. But using the image of Daniel-san and the rowboat, you lose balance when you fall into the water. Right. So looking at that seesaw, that lever of the image that I shared for today, again, my high-tech thing here, when you're looking at that image, there's actions, intentions that produce the mission that rests on top of reality. So what it is that we're doing, allowing reality to sort of keep us, afloat or preserving our movement, right? Because if the seesaw falls off the fulcrum, there is no more movement. So reality keeps us moving. If we were to fall off, that's when we become dysfunctional. Balance is maintaining the relationship of our actions and intentions so that we can stay on top of reality while we elevate our ability to produce, which now creates that deep balance. Right? So hopefully that makes sense. What's up, Orlando? So those are the talking points that I had prepared for today. Balance is a movement, not a position. I offered some insights, and I have a lot of real world experiences, not only in my own life, but in those people that I've coached over the years where, there's such a payoff for designing your life according to balance. People, it's hard for people to realize that. Like I remember when I was broke and people were talking about, money doesn't make happiness and being 20 years old. And I remember thinking, well, fuck that, give me $1 million. I'll be happier than a motherfucker. There's a bigger picture that we have to connect ourselves to. Or don't, you do what you want. But if you're somebody who sees money as, the money's the root of all evil. No, it's not. I even think in the older books that make those types of references, it's really the love of money, right? The love of money, the irrational pursuit of money. It's like Gollum in the Ring. That type of relationship with money, not a good look for an individual. But, and I made this point before, money is resources. Money is like we're not hunters and gatherers as a society anymore. It's like if we really want to provide, let's even say not even provide, but over provide, right? Because the excess provision would be the insurance against some sort of emergencies, right? Some sort of, black swan events. When we have extra, that allows us some insulation from that, some protection from that, some insurance from that, from the vulnerability that those type of events can produce in an individual's life. Well, when we're looking about, well, how do we produce that extra these days? It's money. It's relationships, not just money. It's also relationships. I made the point, I think this was during my mastermind meeting today, where I said, if there was somebody who, joins my mastermind, is not cheap. But let's say the price of my mastermind was now put up against an individual who had something of a comparable value in service that I wanted. Well, what is bartering? Bartering is I have this value and this other person has this value, and we exchange this value in a way that we both, and this, I got this from another writer. He said, isn't it funny that when an individual has a transaction, maybe it's a service provider and a client of that service, upon the transaction, both parties say thank you because they both experience a synergy, meaning they're getting back more than they invested. And that dynamic, allows for an understanding that, well, this could be a moral thing. Why is it that nowadays the average person living in a first world country, lives at a higher quality of life than royalty did 1,000 years ago? We just got to ask ourselves, is there really a finite amount of value that we're all just playing, we're all just trading back and forth? Well, no, there is a level of value that's created from an individual and the synergy that individual interacting with other people produces. And right now, in our mixed economy, it's a lot of the metrics that measure that synergy are measured in money. So having a disdain or an aversion for money is to really reject the one mechanism that we have universally in society to barter and exchange wealth to create that synergy. I don't know if that made sense. It made sense in my head before I shared it, but maybe it resonates with some of you guys. Aaron, what's up, Aaron? Up in Canada. She says, hey, MC, so nothing really came up where I felt like I could throw this question in, haha. But when did you and your wife begin homeschooling? Grade 1 age, 6-ish. Great show, as always, by the way. I appreciate the secondary compliment to the show to embed the question. So, all right, little in a different direction, but I pretty much said what I wanted to say about the other stuff. So let's deal with this question. When did my wife and I begin homeschooling? So this might require a monster. There are some paradigm shifts that ideally occur in a homeschooling household. Paradigm shifts like, what age do we begin homeschooling? What is the homeschool schedule every day? How do you teach them math? Right? Where is the socialization? All these typical questions that come out are very normal. And, it's almost to some extent expected, because when we're moving from a government school model philosophy or mindset paradigm, it's expected that, there needs to be some foundational changes in our relationship with what it is we're trying to do. How many hours a day do you homeschool? How many hours a day am I supposed to homeschool? Why is it that it's supposed to take a couple of hours? What made you ask that question? I could ask questions, have this be a Socratic pain in the ass to people. But if I were to do that, it's really only to have them revisit the premise that they're operating from, which a lot of times is, and I'm not, Aaron, I'm certainly not saying, that's hilarious what you just wrote. I'm not saying that this is your relationship with this, but a lot of times you have people that they'll ask questions that are really more or less sophisticated ways of asking, how do you produce the government school while staying in your home? And that's a premise that needs to be done away with, as far as I'm concerned when it comes to homeschooling. As you guys, and there was a time where I really wanted to embed myself in the homeschooling niche. I didn't, I decided to basically just become a controversial figure that gets blacklisted off of most social media platforms at some point. But so I don't have the stats, the statistics the up-to-date statistics where this is concerned. But when you look at unschooling models, people don't understand. Like John Taylor Gatto, who I've always spoken about as being like the guy. He's the guy. Rickson Gracie is the John Taylor Gotto of jiu-jitsu. John Taylor Gotto has a quote, and it says something to the effect of, reading, writing, and arithmetic requires 50 hours of instruction. At that point, kids can teach themselves. And again, it is such a paradigm shift, especially if you're from like a really big urban area, like a big city. Because although, your kid's perfect, all the other kids look like a bunch of fucking retarded mutants running around the streets, right? And you're like, I gotta get 50 hours and that kid over there is good. So it requires some sort of leap of faith for some people because of their experience. But, I will say my second son, Kaizen, my first son, Hayden, started reading when he was 4. My second son, Kaizen, started reading when he was 3. Hayden, my wife and my first, we were, going over the books, doing the lessons, the phonics, the this, what sound does this make, and doing it all. 4 years old, reading impressively at 4. His younger brother, Kaizen, started reading at 3. It's not that we improved our process. We didn't teach Kaizen how to read. He fucking taught himself how to read. Hanging out with his brother, seeing the attention we gave, to reading, the act of reading. So valuing, doing it, seeing the stories that we were getting. So we started building it. Like, by the way, this is me reverse engineering what must have happened, because there was no intentional effort to teach him. It's not like we were like, fuck that one. We weren't doing that either. It was just after a while, suddenly he just started reading. And it was like, holy shit, he knows what the fuck this says. And it was just an eye-opening experience for me, because I was already going down this path philosophically. But then here it was. Here's this kid that I just basically got out of his way. There were books there. His older brother was reading. So, obviously that all that's granted. But this idea that we have to figure out how these kids can learn, it's not the way that they work. Most of the time we just wind up getting in the way. We slow them down. When I see a 10-year-old who can't read, it's like, holy fuck. Like, well, why don't you people leave this kid alone? Like that's my first reaction. It's not, oh, this kid's a fucking idiot. The kid might be an idiot, but still no reason for him not to be reading at 10, And so the basic paradigms that we start with homeschooling is, for me, like proactively, rather than defining it by some sort of negative perspective, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Like, because I could go on and on about that. What should one do? One should build positive associations with materials that the children show interest in. One should, as a parent or as a teacher, implement the different subjects that, and again, another good thing for us to pay attention to before everybody like freaks out about math and things like that. It's like, okay, you're X amount of years old, whoever's watching this, you use a certain amount of math in your life, because math is always like the big thing. So it's a good thing to use as an example. It's like, how much math do you really use? I was a math guy in school. Like, I enjoyed math. I'd buy math books and solve problems. That was fun to me. I don't use 10% of the math that I was exposed to in my education. But it's also worth noting, I'm also not an engineer. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a math teacher. Like, I'm not in a life that really requires me to know that level of math. Another thing, and I've said this before, and I doubt how many of you motherfuckers actually listened to me when I told you to do this, but there is a free course called Learning How to Learn. It's taught by Barbara Oakley and a man whose name I have yet to remember. But Barbara Oakley, she's the face of the majority of the content. learning how to learn. I don't have an affiliate link. It's a free fucking program. Like, just do this for your own benefit. And you start to see, she tells her story of how she was an interpreter, a translator, whatever the fuck, in the military. She learned how to speak Russian while she was in the military. I don't know if she was in the Air Force, I think. So she went to a military language school. And then after that, something like 30 years old, she decided to become an engineer. And so she just went to engineering school. So she has all the things against her, right? She's in the military. She's already started to go in a different direction with her career. She's a woman going to engineering, right? Women in STEM, all that shit. And then she changed her mind to become an engineer at 30, way too old to start learning about that. And she disproved all of it. And she has a great presentation of information as to why what she did is not as remarkable as people would think. She does a remarkable job with the program, and you guys should do it. And I think, exposing ourselves to those types of like treasure troves of information helps us redesign those paradigms. My kids right now, it's like, yeah, I ask them what books they're reading. The presumption is they're reading a book. I ask them, real math questions. It's like, do me a favor. We got to go to the store. I got $10. We need this, this, and this. I'll go get it. I'll let the kid go up there with $12 worth of stuff with a $10 bill and have that bit of embarrassment. It's like, you only got $10. Didn't you add this stuff together? That's over $10. Oh, I didn't know. So let's get down to $10. Like real world applications. Let them see why they want to know math. My oldest, Hayden, 16, he's teaching himself how to play the guitar. He really wants to learn how to play the guitar. And that is bringing him along, I'll tell you right now, more than somebody paying lessons with a kid who doesn't want to learn how to play a guitar would be. It's people spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars trying to teach their kid how to play an instrument. And none of it reaches the level of a kid who's really just super enthusiastic about it. It's incredible what this guy's doing. My second son, Kaizen, the one who taught himself how to read, he loves editing these videos. I told myself I wasn't going to, because I shared this with a couple of people already, I'm going to put up one of his videos he put. He's busting my balls on it, but I'm going to put it up there. Pretty impressive editing. He was 12 when he did this video. I'll put it up later. When he put it up, he did all of this like on his phone with this apps, and he doesn't have a phone connected. Like my 16-year-old has a phone that actually can make phone calls. Everybody else gets like the old phone is like a PDA or like a little handheld computer or something. So he used his phone and the apps, the editing apps that are on it, and he planned out this whole skit and edited it himself. I didn't teach him how to do that. My wife didn't teach him how to do that. Ironically, my wife's YouTube channel, that son, Kaizen, helps my wife edit her videos for her YouTube channel. We didn't teach him how to do this. He enjoyed it. We encouraged it. We gave him some material so he could pursue it. Then we start asking about it and asking, okay, are you getting better at it? Asking for a little bit of, putting a little bit of pressure on the process. My youngest son, who wants to be a UFC fighter, Mr. Olympia, and a tier 1 operator in the military all at the same time. And he might just fucking do it. But yeah, he's lifting weights. He's like the shit that he does, taught himself how to jump rope. Started watching Rocky, got a kick out of it. He's 10 now. When he was, 6, 7 years old, he was on the deck, middle of the winter, learning how to jump rope. I know how to jump rope. I didn't teach him, though. He's out there doing all this. Every once in a while, I take it and I show him what I could do, and he'd be like, holy shit. And then it would encourage him to learn more. But it's just set it and forget it. Set it and forget it. The best thing we could do for our children is teach them how to be students. It's not to teach them what to learn. They're going to learn what they want to learn. Teach them how to learn it properly. Teach them to have moral and ethical standards. So when they are pursuing these things that they have some sort of passion about, they do understand that there's a minimum level of aptitude they should develop just to be a good person, right? Hope that makes sense. Real quick, we got Corey, thank you for the compliment. Danny says, It sure does come down to just being the best model for your kid, and they will copy. Our youngest learned to read at 4 because we read. Unfortunately, they copy the bad stuff too. Right. Well, Dan, you got to sort that bad shit out. That's on you. My wife and I are much better at hiding bad traits than you are, apparently. But right on. I agree. Corey says, putting a kid in a spot like that sounds pretty genius. Letting them stumble a little without completely falling down. And that's what it's about, like, again, I enjoy that when I bring my kids out to eat, that almost it's my clock telling me I got to go, but every server is telling us, oh, your kids are so well behaved. And it's not that our kids are so well behaved. It's that they're so well behaved compared to all the other little fucking mongrels that these servers are used to dealing with every day. And I tell my kids that, like, listen, you guys are doing a good job as you're supposed to, but you don't get credit for having manners. Right? Just understand she's expressing that because of how misbehaved the other kids are, So it's really about adding context. It's not about telling them what to learn. A lot of times you got to understand as parents, it's going to be very hard not to be biased in what we're pressuring them to become good at. Like, all my kids are learning jujitsu, and I tell them flat out, listen, that's the family business. All you can learn how to fucking fight, whether you like it or not. But all the other things that I have interest in, I don't put them on it. I don't tell them that that's what they have to do. That wouldn't be fair to them. That would be very tyrannical on my part, right? But whatever they decide to do, they can't be a little bitch about it. They got to do it to a certain level of aptitude just to maintain our standards, right? So much more of a long-term approach, I would say. So I don't know if I specifically answered Aaron's question. I would say, given the paradigm changes that I just described, we start homeschooling them as soon as they come home from the hospital. Hope that makes sense. All right, guys, I appreciate you all for hanging out with me. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I mean, I'm supposed to say that. I guess do that. And I'll be here next week, if not before that. I appreciate you. Have a good week. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.